Welcome to Animind, an anime podcast where we nerd out about all things anime and dive deeply into the storytelling art form while dissecting the psychological aspects that it speaks to. I'm your co-host, Matthew Basil.
I'm your co-host, Danny Ari.
And I'm your co-host, Graham Pugh.
In this episode, we will be discussing the movie Perfect Blue. Came out in 1997, might have been actually theatrical release right at the beginning of 1998, but it's basically 1997 Perfect Blue, if you want to look it up. It is directed by, you know what, someone else should probably be doing this name here because I am horrible with names.
Satoshi Kon.
There you go. It's actually originally a novel, right?
Yes, I don't remember what year it came out, but it is based on a novel, but apparently pretty loosely.
This is an anime film that is a psychological thriller. And actually, I think it's the first one we've done that isn't sci-fi fantasy at all. It's purely psychological thriller, real life. Could be very much a live action film, and actually was originally conceived as a live action, but it became an anime when several backers pulled out at the last minute during pre-production. And you can definitely tell, I think, watching this film, you know, it feels like kind of that psychological drama, but it's an anime, so it's a very, I don't know, I found it very unique and very intriguing. I don't know how you two felt about it.
Oh yeah, for sure. This is the first Satoshi Kon movie that I ever saw, and it was the first movie of his that he directed, and it definitely threw me for a loop just because of how the movie is and just the style of it. I was like, am I just missing something here or what?
I love that movie. Like, when it comes to like the way the story's told, I think it's really interesting because I'm a big fan of an unreliable narrator.
Yes.
I think it's really exciting to see different points of view in a story, but I like not being able to tell what's real, what's not. You're second guessing yourself. And I think that's one of the strengths in this movie is that you're always second guessing what you thought was going to happen next. You can't really guess the next moment from second to second. So it doesn't get boring. That's for sure.
Yeah, it keeps you very mentally active and engaged because you're trying to piece together, like, wait, but that means it can't be this thing that I thought it was based on what I just learned. But wait, was that real or was it not? Like, makes me think of like a David Lynch movie.
Oh, yeah.
Someone described this movie when I first watched it as being kind of like if Alfred Hitchcock and David Lynch made a movie and it became anime.
Yes. Yeah, I could see that. If you are a David Lynch fan or a who did Requiem for a Dream? I'm blanking on the name.
Aronofsky.
Yeah, if you're like a fan of those kind of movies, this is definitely an anime for you, even if you're not a fan of anime. And I think even Requiem for a Dream pulled like a bathtub scene, right, from this movie?
Yes, and when you were talking about you could see this being live action, it's kind of funny because the example that I automatically go to is another Darren Aronofsky movie, Black Swan. And a lot of people actually were like, hey, this seems pretty close to Perfect Blue. And he's like, I've never seen that movie. And then when people remembered that he made the scene from Perfect Blue in the bathtub in Requiem for a Dream, people were like, I don't know if I believe you. But yeah, definitely in that same vein, I think, as his movies.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, if you're a fan of those movies, and like I said, you're only a somewhat fan of anime, this is definitely an anime that's definitely going to be up your alley. Because it not only blurs the line in the psychological aspects that like Black Swan, Requiem for a Dream, you know, David Lynch movies definitely do. It blurs the line, which I found really interesting because it involves a lot of an actress, basically. Basically, the premise, for those of you unfamiliar with it, just to bring you up to speed, is a pop star decides to move into an acting career, and she, you know, gets a starring role basically in this like TV drama that makes her a big star, and it breaks her basically psychologically, and it blurs the line between the show and reality. So there's sequences where like you think you're watching reality, and it's a scene for the movie, and vice versa. Even the very first scene, you is Power Rangers, I guess, or some version of Power Rangers, which was a great thing for me for nostalgic reasons to see, like Power Rangers battling some villain, and then it kind of like pulls out, and it shows that it's just a stage production that they're doing, I guess, before she goes on concert. It really kind of plays with your mind as to, wait, okay, that wasn't really part of what's happening in her life. She didn't really get approached by this guy. It was really part of the movie. But wait, did she really? And we just didn't see it, and now we're seeing it in the movie. So it really, really like makes you go topsy-turvy.
And before we go on, I'm going to straight up say it's really important that everyone realizes this is like TVMA. This is they're very sensitive topics, and everything that basically the themes are just very adult. So I just kind of want to warn everybody.
I'd like to say I'm a pretty mentally resilient person, especially when it comes to topics that are pretty dark. But I remember when I first saw this movie, there was a scene that was very realistic and longer than I was expecting for most movies or TV series that would cover a topic like that, to the point where it made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean,
it's his intention, but still, I was like, "Oh, that goes further than I was expecting."
Yeah, I mean, I guess this was probably a good place to put in our two disclaimers here. One, we are going to do spoilers. So if you do want to, not get this movie spoiled for you, we are going to do spoilers from here on out. So this is a spoiler warning. But in addition to that spoiler warning, we want to, like we said, this movie has sexual assault. It covered a lot in it. And it can be, if you're triggered by that makes you feel uncomfortable. Certainly don't listen to this podcast, and join us for the next episode 8, because we will be discussing sexual assault. And since we're a victims and villains podcast, if you are struggling with sexual assault, a victim of sexual assault, there is help. You can look at the sexual assault link that we have in the Victims and Villains Suicide Prevention Resource Library. There you can find RAIN's National Sexual Assault Hotline, which is 1-800-656-HOPE. Or you can also, if you feel more comfortable, live chat with somebody online by going to online.rain.org. And RAIN is with 2 N's, so it's RAINN. So, like I said, we do encourage you, if you are struggling with these issues, to go seek out some help. And like I said, we can find it in the Victims and Villains.net Suicide Prevention Resource Library for that help. But
and then also we're going to put a trigger warning for stalking, because I personally have dealt with stalkers myself, like when I was in high school, like straight up stalking and following and just dangerous situations. So if anybody finds that triggering, I also advise to be cautious.
Yes. So, I mean, normally we recommend everything we cover, or at least we have this season, and say go watch it. This one is a very good film and a very interesting film, but yeah, definitely, like we've been discussing, is very strenuous. So if you are easily triggered by sexual assault or stalking or psychological violence, this would not be a movie for you to watch.
But if you're interested, just based on what we've already said, there's a few places you can find it. I couldn't find anywhere to get it for free, but you can rent it on Amazon, YouTube, Vudu, Apple TV, Google Play, and the Microsoft Store. And the most expensive place that they have it for rent is on Apple TV for $4. Everywhere else is like $2-3. So it's worth the money, I'd say.
Yeah, like I say, it's a good movie if you can take it psychologically. I don't even say take it, because it's or if it does, those psychological themes don't bother you, I guess, and you're not sensitized to those things. I think all of us were slightly triggered by it. All three of us here. I agree with you, Graham, that they telegraph what's coming with that scene, but I was like, wow, they don't hold back. Like, this is probably outside, because there's basically, since I guess we put the spoiler warning, what the scene we're referring to is Mima is the pop star, the main character, who becomes an actress on this drama TV series, and they have her do a rape scene. And it is very graphic, and it is, basically just even though they're doing it as far as part of the show, it is done as it's probably the most graphic one I've seen outside of Sopranos.
I was about to say Sopranos is the other one that I was thinking of where I'm like, ooh, this is really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's that level. Yeah, I mean, I can't really watch those scenes in general, but I will say that this one and the Sopranos one are really, really graphic. They do not shy away from anything that's going on. If you're triggered by that, you want to steer clear of this movie. And like I said, if you are struggling with those issues and need help, definitely check out the Victims and Villains Suicide Prevention Resource Library, or check out RAIN's website at rain.org. Going back to, the premise of the movie and discussions of the movie, I'm in a similar boat as I was with Spirited Away, which was a very, very different movie. But I'm in a similar boat with it in the fact that I'm actually a little lost, as to where the lines were. They did such a good job of blurring them that I was a little bit unsure. I guess not necessarily as to what happened, but as to what's happening underneath, if that makes any sense.
I'll go ahead, and I feel like I'm a little more savvy when it comes to the psychological stuff. So I'll go next, and then we'll have Graham finish up with probably the most accurate description and explanation. So my impression was that the unreliable narrator is what keeps the reader on their toes. I feel like if it weren't for that unreliable narrator, it wouldn't have been as exciting. It wouldn't have been as theatrical. I think that's what draws it, because it is a psychological thriller. And I always appreciate a good unreliable narrator, but it doesn't make it clear for the main character and whether or not she's actually having PTSD and like psychological issues, because she does become an actress and she's apparently a good one. So it's hard to know when she's crying if it's an actual scene of her crying and like having trauma, or if it's her character, and that, I think that was the most difficult for me. Is I only watched it once. I feel like I should have watched it at least 4 times before talking about it, because it was so, like you said, the lines were just really blurred. It's really impossible to tell in her head what is truly triggering for her and what if there is a breaking point for her, because you're under the impression throughout the whole movie that she's the main character here, and that she's the one going through all this trauma, she's the one who's broken, and that's what the viewer is expecting to happen, like, oh, she's the one getting broken, but it's not exactly.
And again, correct me, because like I said, I'm not necessarily saying I'm know this entirely, but when she films that rape scene, that's kind of a pivotal moment. There's actually a second scene as well. When that scene is filmed, that's kind of the pivotal moment for her. And she actually goes back to her apartment. She has kind of a breakdown, and she says, of course I didn't want it to do it, because, there was conflict between her managers and her agents as to whether she should do it. And she said, oh, so I took it that she did actually psychologically go through kind of the experiences of sexual assault there. But I don't know. I mean, maybe was she maybe just so good of an actor that she was kind of imbuing
too meta
in her character? I don't know.
Yeah, the character bleed. Well, okay. I watch a lot of documentaries and I watch a lot of behind the scenes for actors. And you hear a lot about character bleed and how they get in their character's heads so hard, so far, they're so deep into it, that when something traumatic happens to the character, it screws them up for a while, because they've adapted this persona and it's so traumatizing to their character that it's hard for them not to take that home.
Well, I mean, this is an anime, but I mean, this happened to Heath Ledger, obviously. I mean, not only, all the controversy around his role as the Joker in The Dark Knight, but even when he did Brokeback Mountain, I mean, there's, interviews with his cast members telling him basically you're physically changing, because you're holding in all this pain of this character into your body. His body was becoming sagged and tense and sickly, and they said, you need to release this, you need to get away from this character that he was imbuing. So yeah, it does happen all the time. So I guess in theory you could argue, I guess, that she was just such a good actor and meta acting that she was kind of feeling the trauma of this character when she got home. And it wasn't like I guess that was where I was confused. Like, did she feel the trauma? Because that's where it kind of blurs the line. Did she feel the trauma of actually being sexually assaulted because she was so meta? Did she feel that she had stepped across some kind of line and was metaphorically? I see Graham nodding his head, so maybe I'll let Graham talk about this here.
Yeah, go ahead, Graham. And imbue us with your wisdom.
Yes.
The way I interpreted it was, that isn't to say that she wasn't a good actor, but the way I saw it was because that was like her first time like acting, and because it was such a far cry from like
idol work.
Yeah, because idol work is very clean and
chipper.
Yeah, and then the show that she was on where she is sexually assaulted is very gritty and like not in line with idol work at all. And at that point in the movie, like a lot of fans of hers were like sending hate mail about that. They're like, hey, like this feels messed up. This feels kind of like a betrayal of your image. This isn't good. And that's not how we saw you. She underestimated how it was going to be. She wasn't really prepared, and she just took a big step from like chipper, happy idol work, idols having this very like kind of girlish quality to them, and then jumping into a whole different industry where she was playing like a very grounded, dark, gritty role as someone who was sexually assaulted, and that kind of tarnished the image that she had before. And it was just the shock of going from one to the other without that kind of preparation of like, hey, this is going to be pretty realistic. That set off something in her head, and I think she did react to it as if it was real. And there are scenes in the movie where you're unsure if she's in the role or not. One scene starts and you're just thrown in without context, and then it keeps going, and then you're like, wait, what's going on? And then it reveals, oh yeah, this is part of the show. Because another big thing is that the events of the show are actually kind of similar to what's going on in her life at that moment, and then
paralleled.
Yeah, and she's already having that mental break from like experiencing trauma for her, even though it wasn't actual assault and it was just for the show, and that the lines become even more blurred. And I think Satoshi Kon was kind of leaving that up to interpretation and was giving you information to be like, I'll let you figure that out. Just kind of, as long as you can follow the major beats, kind of the blurred lines in between are kind of open to interpretation.
This also threw me too, and this is probably a cultural thing because I haven't hid the fact that I'm new to anime, whereas Graham and Danny are much more seasoned. So I was a little confused because she's a pop idol at first, and then she goes to being an actor. And the whole thing is that, like you said, the fans are angry because she ends up getting like photographed like naked, and it's like a sexual spread. And of course she's, in this gritty thing, and she ends up getting sexually assaulted in there. And I was a little bit confused because they were like, oh, well, this is tarnishing her image. I think of pop idol, I think of like Britney Spears or Taylor Swift.
Very different.
Okay, so there's a difference here. Can you maybe explain that to me?
So I actually watched a documentary on a pop idol maybe 2 years ago. And okay, so I'm going to give a little bit of background information. Pop idols are not like what we think of. Pop idols are more like, the younger they are, the better. The more innocent they are, the better. The more pure and chipper and smiley and just very idealistic form of a pop star. They're not supposed to be sexualized. They're not supposed to be suggestive at all. Just basically, they are fulfilling a very specific fantasy. And anyway, I watched this documentary, and I think this girl, she was like 18 or 20, and they were like, oh, you're getting too old for this. She had a fan base that would literally follow her from like country to country, that they were so enveloped in her and dedicated to her and her image that they would go wherever she went. They would buy 50 copies of her CD. They would have posters everywhere. There was this one guy who was her biggest fan, and he had Polaroids of her and him from the last 8 years. He's just like, yeah, like this is awesome and exciting, and I'm her biggest fan, and that was his bragging point, I guess. But this girl, she was like, it's a lot of pressure to keep this image. I'm going into my 20s, and I'm getting told I'm getting too old for this. Because, the age of adulthood is like 14 in Japan. So that's almost 10 years into the business. You're starting to get a little old. But that's the point, is that they're supposed to be childlike and pure and just radiate that image. And that's kind of what I wondered. I wish there was some sort of clarity on her age, because it's already really hard to tell the ages of characters in anime, but her specifically, because there's such triggering things that happen, I kind of wish we knew her age, because there's, fake rape scenes and nudity and stalking and all kinds of craziness.
I just looked it up. I'm not sure what the source is on this and how reliable it is, but it says that she's 21.
Okay,
which would make sense then, because she's kind of transitioning from like a child. I know you said at age of adults like 14, but I mean that's 21's kind of when we all kind of consider adult, at least in the West here. I kind of figured it was something like that as the movie went on, but at first I was like, what are you talking about? She has to be like, she can't be sexual. Britney Spears, like, posed at like age 17, like half naked in a, magazine. Right. I mean, it's, that's what pop stars are not pure in the West. I mean, when I think pop star, I'm thinking like Madonna,
right.
And
very different.
Very, very different than what we're, than what she was doing. Okay, so that makes sense then why they were getting so upset. The fact that she was like depurifying that like pure innocent image.
You mentioned Britney Spears, and that makes me think of similarly to like pop stars here in the West. Even though like the image is very different, I feel like a lot of the time there's kind of a similar expectation and kind of trajectory. In a way, it comes to the point that when they get older, they kind of take this step into like, I'm not a little girl anymore. Like, and like I can be suggestive or sexual. And then there's backlash where it's like, whoa, hey, she's not acting the same anymore. This is a different side of her that we see. A few examples I can think of are like Britney Spears, of course, and then Lindsay Lohan, even though actress and not pop star necessarily, and also like Miley Cyrus.
Those are great examples. And let's be honest, here in the West, I mean, pop stars, again, I'm going back to my childhood in the 90s. I mean, whether you're talking Britney Spears or Jessica Simpson or NSYNC or Backstreet Boys, I mean, all of them were, so male or female, they were all being sexualized, no matter what their ages were. So that's why when they seemed to be in this movie very against her being sexualized, I was like, well, wait, she was a pop star. But now that makes a lot more sense.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below, wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
So she gets this role in this series. They basically they're trying to make her a star, transition her from being a pop idol, which is, I guess, pure and innocent and music and stuff like that, to a legitimate drama actress. Her agent kind of tries to get the producers and the writers of the show to give her meteor part, because she just originally has this real small part. And then the writer decides to write her in as this graphic rape scene. I took that as he was being a little predatory. I don't know if anyone else got that feeling.
Yeah.
Like he was kind of he was purposely doing that, not to help her career, but to purposely kind of sexualize this pop idol.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in this movie.
He does that, and she gets triggered by that. I mean, like we said, she definitely gets affected by it. And then she starts seeing a version of herself as the pop idol, who basically kind of taunts her and says she's turned her back on her true life. And that's kind of where her whole reality gets upheavaled.
Okay, so that was the really confusing part. Completely subtracting
that
all
was
the
the really confusing part. I was going to say all the movie was confusing.
Well, no, subtracting the unreliable narration. Even after watching it, I'm curious how her stress, apparently it manifested into this, image of her that speaks to her and looks like her and is calling her a fake because she's done these lewd things. And I just don't understand how she's seeing herself, and then this vision ends up being a real person. I don't understand how these two things happen simultaneously. It's really convenient that she was having these visions of her past self. It's like, oh, you're a fake now, you've sold out kind of stuff. You're not real anymore. I'm real. Then it turns out someone else got this dissociative personality disorder where they think they're her. They think they're the real her. And then these two coincide at a precise moment. I'm trying to understand. Graham, can you shed any light on this?
We're going to look to Graham here.
Yeah.
That was another part for me that's still a little unclear.
Okay. I'm not the only one then.
I feel like that's one thing that is just something very much in the wheelhouse of Satoshi Kon. I think every movie of his, to an extent at least, toys with what's real, what's not, and just kind of makes the line very blurred. One of my favorite anime, period, is a show of his called Paranoia Agent that's all about that. And then Paprika is very much about that. It has to do with dreams a lot. It's compared with Inception, although it came out a few years before. So I think part of that is meant to be confusing. Mima is seeing this image of herself that is a pop idol that's kind of talking to her and making her feel shame and doubt about this career move that she's made and the things that she's done since having transitioned from being a pop idol to an actress. And then you find out there is someone having a very similar experience, but I don't think what she is seeing when she sees that pop idol version of herself is also the real person. I think...
No, I understood that, but there was that one point where it is also that person.
I think it's supposed to be just kind of blurring that line a little bit, because it's you're getting all this information and then there's what's actually going on and then how she's seeing it, and then her mind crosses the two together at that point. I'm trying to remember that exact scene. It's been a little bit.
Well, she's under stress, clearly.
Yeah.
Because there's a moment that I just think of Groundhog Day. She's going through the same thing. She's waking up at the same place. Literally the scene is the same. It's 4 times, I think. She wakes up, she goes, she meets with Mima. I wish, because all of this is happening, I wish there was a scene where we find out Rumi has been drugging her or something. It would make a lot more sense as to why she's losing time. Because it appears to me, at least as the viewer, that Mima is losing time. She'll stop. She'll be like, okay, cut. The scene cuts, and then she wakes up in bed. I wish there was some sort of scene that we were given that, she's being manipulated via drugs or something, or if it was some sort of explanation that would make more sense.
I wish there was an explanation for that. And what I was just thinking when you said that was, it doesn't necessarily have to be drugs. Like, I think one way of explaining it is, and I've experienced this myself, is a lot of the time when you go through a panic attack or some really stressful event that, like, there's just gaps in your memory.
Oh yeah, disassociating. I understand that. No, I've had the same thing happen, but it's happening over and over and over, which makes you really wonder. That's why I thought she was the one with the multiple personalities.
Yeah. I think that's another thing that's left open, where it's like, is it this? Is it this? And it's not just explicitly said. Who knows? Very much not about giving you any answers for most of the time.
I took that as just a narrative way, or I guess I don't know if I'm using the right terminology here, but a narrative way, or a way for the medium to bring the viewer into her head, because she's totally off balance right now. She is, disassociating. Right. She is not sure what's reality, what she's actually done, what she's blocking out, because she's at this point questioning, because there's basically the photographer who took her nude shots and the screenwriter who wrote the rape scene have both been murdered. So she's at this point questioning if she's the murderer.
Well, and then she finds the bloody clothes, and she's like, oh God, maybe I did kill him. And that's when you're like, oh man, maybe she did kill him.
And I kind of took it that's just trying to put you in her state of mind, because I think it's could be very easily argued that she is suffering from PTSD from the rape scene.
Yeah, that's how I saw it.
I mean, I know I've lost time. Under extreme duress, under extreme trauma, in my life, especially because I'm a writer. I have an active imagination. When I was very young, I was concerned. Are these things these stories I have, could I actually do these things that these characters are doing in my head? Right. So that's how I took it. But again, like Graham said, I think it's the filmmaker kind of leaves so much open in this movie. So for you to just interpret, like we mentioned, Rumi is her agent, I guess, or manager, who is apparently a huge fan and can't take the fact that she's now no longer a pop idol and is an actress being defiled basically by cinema or whatever in Japan. And so she kind of takes on the pop idol of Mima's persona. And that's the other thing too. I'm still not sure. And again, you two can shed light on this. Was it really Mima who did do the killings, or was it Rumi?
Rumi.
It was definitely Rumi who did the killings?
Yeah, like she was also, I think Rumi was also kind of manipulating Mima by targeting people who specifically had screwed her over. But because she knew the people who had screwed her over, since she has a working relationship with Mima and knew that information, that she was doing it also to kind of make Mima question herself, like, well, that guy did screw me over and now he's dead. And did I do that?
I don't see it as a purposeful act. Because she's got this multiple personality disorder, it makes what she's doing, of course it's going to be surrounding Mima, because Rumi thinks she's Mima. So, of course, the person who took pictures of her, of course, the person who wrote that scene, of course, just all of these people are going to be killed because she feels specifically targeted, because she feels that she is her.
A quick question that I think helps make the answer to this a little more clear-cut for what can be more easily explained as much as you can for this movie. When Mima found the bloody clothes, was that at her apartment or at Rumi's apartment?
Ooh, that's a great question.
See, that's what threw me, because
if they're in
Rumi's apartment is made to look exactly like Mima's apartment.
That was one of the reasons I was asking, because part of me was, if it was intentionally, and if it was in Rumi's, then that would be like, oh yeah, well she thinks she's the real Mima, so yeah, that wasn't like an intentional thing of, oh, I'm gonna gaslight.
Otherwise she's setting her up.
Yeah, which I think is also which I'm thinking is a possibility, because she's like, oh, I'm the real Mima, this one's a fake, and then she is in contact with the stalker and saying, get rid of the fake Mima.
Yeah, she is specifically targeting her, because I think there is a certain point where clearly she breaks. She's crying on the rape scene. She's like, this actually happened. Oh no. And then she just breaks and runs off. And you're like, oh, she's really upset about this. But then you find out that, oh, that's where her psyche literally breaks off, because she then is like, oh, this person's a fake. I'm the real one. And then, of course, she's talking about all of this with the stalker. And she goes, I'm the real Mima. She's an imposter. Would the real Mima, this innocent, pure idol star, would this person be taking nude pictures? Would they be enacting rape scenes on TV? You know, she straight up starts using that to her advantage to try to get this quote unquote fake Mima out of the way, because she legitimately believes that she is an imposter.
I can't remember if the movie explicitly says it or it's just inferred that she's always been Mima's manager. So, like, throughout all of her pop idol career and as an actress, that she's seen her from like day one and all through her career, and then also kind of feeling that betrayal that the fans are feeling when she's like, I'm going to make this big career shift and show them I'm not a little girl anymore. And then with that and the knowledge that you find out towards the end of the movie that Rumi used to also be a pop idol. Oh,
I completely missed that. What?
Yeah, she used to be a pop idol, so I think that's also another reason why she kind of manifests that, because I think she got to the point where it's like, oh, you're too old, you got to quit doing this, and then she just became a manager for other pop idol groups. And then when she saw she kind of tarnished her own image, she's like, no, you're not supposed to do that. And then she's like, you ruined your chance of being a pop idol. And she kind of having that kind of living out your dream through your children or whatever kind of thing. Like when you see
vicariously through them.
Yeah. Like how moms enter their children and like children pageants and.
Oh God. Oh, don't even get me started.
We go down a dark path here. We're talking about parents living through their children.
But yeah, I think that was also part of it. She was also feeling that kind of betrayal where like she took it really personally. You are making a mistake leaving the industry. Like, you could have had it so good, and I miss my idol days, and you're never going to get them back now. And you've ruined this image that we've held idols up to by doing this.
It's funny, thinking back to the first scene when she's getting this talk, I completely had assumed that it was her parents that are like, oh, you went through all this training. Was it her parents or was it Rumi that was talking to her like, oh, you've gone through all this training. Why would you give that up?
At the beginning, it was her mother.
Okay, because now I'm like rethinking everything I saw. God, I got to rewatch this movie again. It's like Inception or
But
one of those type of movies where you miss something every time you pick something up.
Yeah, at the beginning, it's actually twice. It's done twice. There's a conversation where she has with the other agent, the male one, I forget his name.
Yeah.
And Rumi, and Rumi's trying to say, well, you worked so hard, you've gone through all this training. She can't throw this all away, and she's trying to argue for it. And then she's like, immediately after that scene, or immediately before it, I forget. She's in the apartment talking to her mom and saying, oh yeah, I know I went through all those voice lessons when I was a little kid, and told you I always dreamed of being a pop singer, but now I got to move on to acting. It's the next step in my career. Pop idols don't have long careers and stuff like that. I think we've looked at the fact that we're obviously looking at a young woman who is a pop idol in Japan. So it's a very pure, like a lighthearted, innocent image. She then tries to transition to serious acting, which obviously involves now that image being tarnished, which is actively exploited by the photographer and the screenwriter. Right. Yes. Who sexualize her purposefully and overly sexualize her, and then of course it causes her to go into a PTSD kind of spin. And again, since we're a Victims and Villains podcast, I will mention the victimsandvillains.net does have a mental health resource library if you are going through PTSD or anything, or sexual assault or anything like that. There are resources there to help you, so please check them out. But so this character goes into that tailspin. Then we also have this agent of hers who was trying to vicariously live out her days as a pop idol through her, and has a psychotic break as well, which leads to dissociative personality disorder, where she creates this other personality that is the main character as a pop idol, and then tries to get revenge and, like, kill the people who sexualized her, get this rabid fan to go and kill the real Mima, so that basically she's no longer tarnishing the pop idol image. And that leads to, obviously, the climax, which is where I am now asking, so what was the point or the message of the movie? Because I mean, it's called Perfect Blue. Blue, I believe, in Japan symbolizes purity or innocence, if I understood that correctly, when I was researching this. And she kind of, at the end, she saves Rumi, but she's looking at her pop idol self. She saves her pop idol self from being run over by a truck, basically. Rumi then goes into a mental hospital, and the next scene we see is Mima now in a car, presumably being a famous star. And, a lot of the stuff that I was looking at after this film said, oh, well, yeah, now she's a famous star, so she crossed that threshold from pop idol to, I guess, serious actress, which was the point of the movie. But to me, that doesn't ring true for a lot of the stuff that I was seeing, because she was being exploited as an actress a lot of ways, and being forced to do things she didn't want to do, and was being essentially raped. I mean, like, literally raped, being an actress. And I didn't know if that was supposed to be that she was kind of selling out her pure self to be, I mean, I don't know if I watched too many Hollywood movies about this, but I don't know if she was selling out her pure self, and it was actually like a tragic thing at the end that she does this, or if it was or she really did find out who she really was. I know the pop idol group is called Sham, if I understood correctly. I don't know if that translates again to the West, but sham usually means, like, a sham fake image. So I didn't know. I was getting confused with this.
It's with a C, though.
Sham. Okay, so there you go.
Yeah, but I didn't get that for, like, the main point. Honestly, I feel like this is a story about a girl, or rather 2 women, who are going through traumatic experiences because of the same situation and how they deal with this trauma. But I think the end scene is supposed to be, because she's so, like, maybe I'm doing this, maybe she's so unsure of herself that she's questioning, maybe I did kill those people. Maybe I am losing this time and doing things that I wouldn't do. Maybe this is bad for me. Maybe I did sell out and it's ruined me. I can't remember. So she's kind of lost in herself for a lot of the movie. And I think at the end of the movie, she says, I'm real. Like, I'm me. I'm here. Because she's realizing she's gotten to this point in, like, secure with herself, that I am aware of my own decisions. I am aware of my own being. I'm making my own choices. Nobody else is, and I'm living for myself. Whereas she's questioning every action she makes throughout the whole movie. So this is kind of her solidifying her own decisions and finally coming to terms that, you know what, like, I'm glad that I did what I did, and here I am, and I'm going to make the most of it. That's what I got.
To add on to that, at the beginning, she was like, I want to make this decision for myself, which, given how, like, the music industry, especially when it comes to pop idols, is concerned, like, it's very sanitized, very, like, the executives and everything are very much about selling this image and, like, micromanaging everything so that everything is presented perfectly. And then when she makes that decision for herself, it's a big step, because she's like, this isn't someone deciding, like, oh, I think this would be good for you. She's like, no, I'm doing it. And then she's kind of hit with a lot of backlash, and she's like, no, I'll do it. And then when she commits to that decision, even then she's being manipulated by all these different higher ups, like the photographer, the producer, the screenwriter, stuff like that. And then as the movie goes on, I think by the end, when she says, no, I'm the real me, I think that is her. It's like sticking to her guns and not doubting, like, oh, what am I going to do anymore? And, like, now she's not being led around by executives or second guessing herself, I think is kind of how I saw it. And I think the big thing about the movie is that it's a critique of just the entertainment industry.
Oh yeah.
And parasocial relationships. So that makes it have aged very well, especially with how people are with like internet celebrities a lot of the time, because the obsessive fan, who they just call Mamania in the movie, he feels so betrayed because he's like, that's not the Mima I know, because he's been sold this very
idealized
image of her just based on what he knows. That's the image he's sold. He doesn't really know her, but because of his dedication and because of what he's seen, he thinks he's like entitled.
Yeah, I was gonna say that myself. He feels that's kind of what the documentary I watched kind of went into, is that all of these fans have been following them and been dedicated to them for so many years. They feel entitled to their person, almost like their decisions, like, oh, she wouldn't do this, and she isn't that person, because that's the point. That's what this entertainment business is selling, is a personality that doesn't exist. And I think that's a very underlined theme in this movie, is there's somebody behind the pop star. There's somebody behind the image. There's somebody behind who this outward appearance is. And speaking from experience, like, who I am on the internet is 1/20th of who I am as a person. There's so much else, but it's just normal to not want to broadcast your weaknesses, to not want to broadcast the things that are stressing you out, and that's kind of normal, and maybe it shouldn't be. It makes you wonder as the viewer, maybe we should be showing the realistic side of pop culture, of stardom. It's not as glamorous as you'd think. And it's the same idea with Instagram, like well-known Instagrammers or Twitch streamers. That's such a small percentage of who somebody is. It's hard to just base like, oh, a whole personality on one aspect of a person. And I think that's kind of one of the main takeaways from this.
What you see on the internet, it's not like it's either this or how I am in real life when I'm with this group of people. It's not like one or the other, like how the fans were like, oh, she's the pop idol, now she's just going to be the movie star, instead of, no, those are both valid
pieces of her.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, yeah, we talked last episode, if you listen to their episode about Spirited Away, we talked about toxic capitalism. This is, toxic social media and celebrity. Again, like you said, you can filter out so much of yourself through social media. Social media allows you to filter out so much of yourself.
Even your image. You can literally filter your image too.
Can literally filter your image. And so, people see other people on social media and they think that's all of them. And they think that they're imperfect because these people look like they're doing so much and having so much fun and so put together and so beautiful. And, and it's not, it's just a filter of, a small percentage of them. And so it makes, you feel inadequate, and it disrupts communication between us.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
Again, there's sexual assault in this movie, and it's pretty graphic. There's actually two scenes. There's the scene where she does it in the the show, which triggers her breakdown when she first is trying to become a star. And then at the end, she is not technically raped, but the rabid fan tries to rape her when he's trying to kill her because Rumi sends him after her. And both could really speak to what you just said, because I mean, rape is, yes, it's a sexual assault, but I mean, rape it's about power. Exactly. It's about infringing your own will over somebody or ownership over somebody.
Which is how he saw her. Like at the very beginning of the movie, there's a shot where she's still performing on stage and he's in the crowd and he like sticks his hand out and it looks like she's in the palm of his hand.
I was actually going to say the same thing. It's such a nicely bow-tied metaphor for his character, is that he views her as this almost this object that he can claim entitlement of. And throughout the whole movie, and especially up to the climax of the movie, his delusion goes so far as to try to kill her.
He has very much the entitled sense of ownership, to the point where it's like, well, if I can't have you, nobody can have you.
I didn't get that. He thinks, oh, you're so fake, and this isn't who you are, and he's in denial. And I think that's why. I don't think he gets because he doesn't really act out towards her. He follows her everywhere, but he doesn't act out towards her until he's told by the quote unquote real Mima to do that. So I think it was that was the inciting moment for him, more so than, oh, she's not this person. I mean, obviously people were thinking it, people were saying stuff about it, but the action wasn't caused because of that. It was caused because of Rumi.
I think maybe part of the violent change in his action, I mean, apart from Rumi being like, hey, go kill her, she's the fake one, she's not the version you like, I think part of it is, and I think maybe this is me just kind of putting my views and kind of some of the talking points that have come out in the past few years with like the Me Too movement and everything, and just the discussion of sexual violence towards women is, well, you were like leading me on, you were giving me this image, like once you like gave a sliver of sexuality, then that means I'm okay to like be a pervert or to do this, that, or the other.
Yeah, I see that.
It wasn't until after then that he started like targeting her for sexual violence. Everything else before was stalking and not directed like overtly towards her. But then at the end, when he's told by Rumi, hey, go take her out, she's the fake one, then he not only tries to murder her, he tries to rape her. Maybe I'm looking too deeply into it, but
no, I think that's definitely a part of it. It's like Danny said, with the fans feel ownership. And I guess this movie was kind of, that's why I said it was interesting. I don't like using that term, but I don't know how to use another term. But it was interesting to see these two scenes, because it's the industry that was causing the rape scene, and then it was the fans who were causing the rape, the sexual assault.
As a result of the industry.
As a result of the industry, yeah. So it's, and that's kind of what celebrities, and like you were saying, people in even just Twitch streamers and everything like that, they're pulled apart by their fans, and they're pulled apart by the industry that controls them, or usually has the money source that to give them. So she was kind of being coerced by both the industry and her fans, and did not have any true self, like you said, up until the end, when she kind of finally realizes her true self through that trauma. This boils down to a movie, about trying to find your true self when you feel coerced or pulled apart or forced to be something that you're not. And that's, again, was the main character's odyssey. As a pop star, pop idol, moving to an actress, she was trying to overcome the industry, overcome her fans' image of what she should be, overcome what her, manager and agent felt she should be, and trying to find what she actually wanted to be, and what she really truly was, and what she really truly wanted to make her life of. And that can be a very difficult thing, and you can run into a lot of trauma. Again, I have always been impressed with the anime that we've done this season, how it speaks to me very, very acutely. And I can certainly, speak to trying to find my own self. I suffer from PTSD as well. So I totally get that, and definitely identified with the character. And I think this was a very interesting way to take what could have been just kind of a cop drama, psychological thriller, and really add some interesting layers to it. And it's like I said, it's a intense film. We will reiterate again one last time. It has some intense sexual assault scenes. It has violence. It has stalking. If you're triggered by any of this, it involves characters with mental health issues, PTSD. If you're triggered by any of this, please check out the mental health suicide prevention resource page on the victimsandvillains.net. You can try calling RAIN's National Sexual Assault Hotline at 800-656-HOPE. That's again, 800-656-4673. If you feel more comfortable doing a live chat online, you can go to online.rain.org, and RAIN is with 2 N's, so RAINN. So you go to online.rain.org and live chat in Spanish or in English on their website as well. That's specifically for sexual assault. If you're just dealing with PTSD or other mental health issues, there's a plethora of other resources that are on Victims and Villains Suicide Prevention Resource Library if you go to victimsandvillains.net, which is our parent company. So definitely encourage you to do that. If you are interested in the film that we talked about, it is a good film, but like I said, it is a rough one. So definitely don't put yourself at risk if you feel you'll get triggered or have difficulty with those issues. So that will do it for this episode of Animind. Next episode, we will be going to a blast from the past in anime, and we will be doing Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I'm having some cheers here. I know you can't see it for those listening, but
that's my jam.
I am actually probably most excited about this one. I was a huge fan of Inuyasha already before we started the series. Inuyasha, like I said, actually was kind of what led to this series being created. So outside of Inuyasha, though, this is probably the one that I'm most excited about. Just because I used to see when I watched Inuyasha, I used to see commercials for it. And I was always like, oh, this looks really intriguing. But I think it came on too late. I was usually in bed and asleep by the time it came on when I was in college watching Inuyasha. So I'm really excited to finally delve into this one and experience it. But I don't know much about it. So I don't know if one of you two want to just kind of give a brief kind of thing.
Yes. And to be specific, we're going to be doing Brotherhood. So Brotherhood is actually the closest following the manga series. There is another version that was just called Full Metal Alchemist, and it was being made at the same time as the manga, and it kind of surpassed the manga, unlike Inuyasha, that ended up getting canceled so that they could finish the manga before finishing the series. Anyway, Brotherhood is the good one. It's the one that's the closest following the manga, and basically it's about these two brothers who lose their mom as children. They're trying to get her back and encounter a lot of issues. One of them being his brother loses his body, and I think that's like the first episode, so I'm not really spoiling anything because he's a giant robot mech looking, but he's like got a little kid voice. It's adorable. And it also, they're encountering the 7 deadly sins as people, as these homunculi, these demons. So personified sins. One of my favorite parts about the whole thing. And basically it follows their adventures and helps. He's trying to get his brother's body back. He lost some limbs and stuff. It's super cool though. It's my favorite anime for a reason, so I'm really stoked to cover it.
Sounds like something right up my alley, so I'm excited as well. Till then, where can our listeners find you?
You can find me both on Twitch and Instagram at Kittens and Caffeine.
And you can find me on Twitter at MadShellfish2.
All right, and you can find me at humanOneNature.blogspot.com. That's the blog where I post my writings, and it's the numeral 1. Not spelled out. And if you want to contribute to this conversation or suggest any animes for us to cover, you can email us at animindpodcast@gmail.com. victimsinvillains.net.com.
So we just want to apologize to our listeners if they heard any audio glitches or problems with this episode. It's still a learning curve over here at Animind. Hopefully it didn't mar your enjoyment of our discussion here. We'll continue to try to improve. For those of you who want to see us without a safety net, we will be doing a live real-time discussion on February 19th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Victims and Villains Twitch feed, which is https://m.twitch.tv/Victims and Villains. We will be discussing the series Attack on Titan to kick off Victims and Villains live stream that weekend to promote mental health awareness. So we hope you'll join us then.
You can follow our parent company, Victims and Villains, over at victimsinvillains.net. I know I've mentioned them several times in this episode since Perfect Blue had a lot of psychological and traumatic things going on. But you can follow our parent company at victimsinvillains.net. There on their website, they have a Facebook link, Twitter link, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube links. They also have movie resources, movie reviews, podcasts like this one. And they have, most importantly, a mental health resource library, which again, if any of the things we talked about tonight stirred up something for you, please go check that out. And that will lead you to some people who can help you. So until next time, keep both your mental health and anime on the mind.